You see, the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board decided to cancel a training session in Vancouver. It was set to take place next week. And the topics, were use of force and how remorse can lead to redemption, how someone who expresses remorse can lead to some kind of redemption. But you see, some people didn't like who was part of this training, showing that perhaps remorse doesn't matter at all, or showing that these people need this training more than anything else. Because one of the people who was part of this training, a small part apparently, Kim Potter. Do you remember that name? I remember the name. I was like, where do I know that name from? Kim Potter? Harry's friend? But then I was like, no, it can't be that because I didn't read the books. I don't remember the movies. So I Googled it. I was like, oh, that Kim Potter. The Minnesota officer who accidentally killed Daunte Wright during a traffic stop where she mistook her firearm for the taser. It was very clearly a mistake. She was charged, and she went to jail for a little over a year. So she's now out of jail, and she was one of the people doing the training. And an important note on this, she's doing the training with the prosecutor who charged her in Minnesota, which is a really interesting detail. In fact, that guy, Imran Ali, he's the former assistant Washington County prosecutor out in Minnesota. He's the one who approached Kim Potter with this idea, which had to have been the most awkward conversation in the history of awkward conversations. But apparently, at least according to him, she said she was very eager to do that kind of work because if it could save a life, she wants to be a part of that. Because that's the kind of person who she is. Now, the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board, they had the agenda for this training. They knew it included Kim Potter, but according to one member of the board, they were like, we didn't realize it was that Kim Potter. Again, we thought it was the Potter who's best friends, but also the cousin of Harry, but we didn't really read the books all the way through, and we didn't remember the movies, so we just went with it. They say they didn't realize. And they only realized it last week when a reporter from the Seattle Times reached out because they wanted to turn this into a story. This wasn't actually a story until the Seattle Times manufactured it into one. And now it is, in fact, a story because the training got canceled. They said it would be insensitive and inappropriate. Now, why would it be insensitive? Why would it be inappropriate? It seems like this would be the most appropriate person to talk about this kind of issue, this topic. We have folks who used to be gang members who committed egregious crimes, who then get paid to talk to kids about why they shouldn't join gangs. Is that appropriate? Is that insensitive? I'm sincerely asking that question because it seems like in those instances, it's totally appropriate. We have people who committed acts of political terrorism that ended up killing people, and they give commencement speeches at colleges. Some of them become professors. Now, the Washington Liquor and Cannabis Board Chair, David Postman, speaking with King 5, says the second that they realized who Kim Potter was the second that they decided to pass on this.
You'd like to think whoever was organizing it would think, this could be controversial. Let's find the person who can tell you how not to do that through training, through professionalism, all of those things. I don't know that you need that story from that storyteller.
Yeah, I mean, why would we want to learn about mistakes from someone who paid a steep price for a mistake? A mistake that happens to be the very kind of mistake that some of your folks can make. Why should we learn about remorse from someone who actually has it and is now using it for good? Why would we ever do something like that? How silly. Who thought of that? Now, Daunte Wright's mother, Katie, she spoke with King 5. She said she had no idea that Kim Potter was going to be part of any kind of training session until after it got canceled and the media started to reach out to her for comment.
Whenever I hear Kim Potter's name or hear her doing anything like this, it's like tearing a Band-Aid off of a forever bleeding wound.
Now, from her perspective, of course, I totally understand that. And I think any of us could certainly understand the perspective that she just put out there as someone who is a family member of the victim. Regardless of whether or not you thought Wright did the correct thing in all of this after being pulled over and then putting Kim Potter in a position where she felt like she needed to use her, what she thought was a taser, but turned out to be a firearm, which is a huge problem in and of itself. But I think all of us can understand that perspective. Where I object is here. It's
not her story. It's my son's story. Nobody can learn from that.
Actually, a ton of people can actually learn from that. I mean, should we not take away anything from that incident? Is there nothing to be taken away from an incident in which a cop accidentally uses a firearm instead of a taser? Because it feels like there's a ton of lessons that can be learned there. Should we not tell that story at all? Now, we can't tell your son's story, and I get that point. But there is someone else who is involved here who clearly did not intend to do what she did, who went to jail for it, who now wants to do good. It seems to me that that's the exact kind of person y'all will want to hear from on the left, because you're the ones who tell us over and over and over again that we shouldn't be keeping people in jail long because it doesn't actually work. It doesn't get them to turn their life around. We should be giving them the support they need societally to get them on that right path. That's what you guys say. You guys tell us that it's appropriate to hire a former pimp to be a street czar for the city of Seattle because based on that guy's knowledge of the streets, he can actually get something done and he wants to do it for good. You're the ones who are saying, hey, landlord, you're going to be forced into giving one of your properties to a criminal, and we're going to ban you from asking whether or not that person has a felony conviction on his or her record because we don't want you discriminating against that person. That's you guys. Y'all are the ones who are telling employers that you can't ask about felony convictions during the application stage because you think that that's going to discriminate against people and cause them to not get a job. And yet here, apparently, we're saying, oh, it's totally cool. She doesn't get to have a job that's trying to do some good post-jail. And of all the people to support her and stand up for her, shockingly, is Keith Ellison, the Attorney General from Minnesota, who is as anti-cop as you'll find in that kind of position, who is an extremist, but even he is looking at this and saying, well, that's a stupid decision. Why would you do that? Now, I don't know if his office has something to do with some of the training. It's a little unclear. But he provided a statement to a bunch of different media outlets that covered this, saying we should all support and at least respect how victims feel. At the same time, as Attorney General, we're trying to reduce deadly force encounters between police and community. I think it's admirable that Kim Potter would want to come forth and tell her story to help other people learn. I mean, she has a cautionary tale to tell. Of all the issues, I ever thought I would be on the same side of Keith Ellison. I never thought it would involve a cop in any way, shape, or form. At least in this case, he's taking the side of a cop who went to jail because of his prosecution.
Even a blind squirrel finds a nut.
Just saying. I find that to be, this is an interesting story to me. And it calls out the hypocrisy. And for once, it's not the hypocrisy of a progressive like Keith Ellison. It's Washington Democrat hypocrisy. I don't know any Republicans who are mad about this or would be. You can't tell us that you're all about second chances, third chances, even 10th chances, but then you're saying, well, Kim Potter, this is just one step too far. The sex offender, well, we'll release them into the community and not tell anyone in Tenino. That's perfectly appropriate. But this woman who did her time, we don't want to touch that. Quick, can someone get us a gang member who's accused of drive-by shooting and actually did jail time for a mass shooting to tell us about remorse? That would be way less controversial, please. Well, not that gang member. That gang member doesn't have enough tattoos. Get us someone who's stereotypical. No, I'm not going to define what that means because then I'm going to go, oh, you're trying to cancel me now. Oh, you can't get one by the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board.